Hello, good day everyone. I'm Miguel de Guzman and I'm gonna explain the 4 C++ programs that I have done today. Okay, so let's start with number 1. So for the 4 programs, I will not explain the inclusion of the header files and these functions because we already know this and they are already given. So let's start here in the declaration of variables. So for this program, I use 3 variables which are the first val for the first value, second val for the second value, and third val for the third value. So I declare these 3 variables as int or integer data type. Next, as you can see, I use input and output functions here. So to ask the user for the first value, I use cout command together with the string input the first value. Then for the user to be able to put a value, I use cin command. This will let the user to input or type his desired value for the first value. For the second value and third value here, it is the same as what I do in the first value. So no need for further explanation there. Okay, next, let's move on to our selection control statement. So here in number 1, we are asked to use if statement to find the greatest value among the 3 integer values that will be input by the user. So for the first statement here, if first val is greater than second val and third val, or first val rather, is greater than third val, followed by cout, the greatest value is first val. So this statement, this means that if the first val or first value is greater than second val and first val is also greater than third val, then our program will print the string here, which is the greatest value is together with the value of the variable first val. So to put it in a simple explanation, if this if statement turns out to be true, then the program will print this output. But if it turns out to be false, then the program will move on to our next if statement, which is second val is greater than first val and second val is greater than third val. So if this statement is true, then the program will print this output. But if it is false again, then the program will move on to our last statement, which is if third val is greater than first val and third val is greater than second val. If this is true, then the program will print this output. Then we can end our program using return exit success. Now let's try to run our first program. So input the first value. For example, it is 10. Second value 58. Then for the third value, for example, it is 73. Then we will get the greatest value is 73. So this means that our program works properly. Okay, so for number 2, I use the same 3 variables because it is the same question as number 1. I just added another variable here, which is capital GV, which stands for greatest value. And I also declared it as integer data type. So same output and input functions lang din yung ginamit ko dito tulad nung sa number 1. So I will not further explain it dahil na-explain ko na din siya kanina. Now let's focus on this part. So for this number, we are asked to use conditional operators to find the greatest value. This line of code here is just equivalent to this line of codes in number 1. And as you can see, we managed to put it here in one line of code using conditional operators. So, if our first Boolean expression here is true, which is the first val is greater than second val, and first val is greater than third val, then GV is equals to first val. But if it is false, then the program will move on to the next Boolean expression here, which is second val is greater than third val. Now, if this Boolean expression turns out to be true, at dahil nga nag-false yung unang Boolean expression, then GV is equals to second val. But if nag-false pa rin yung second Boolean expression natin, meaning na both of these Boolean expressions is false, then GV is equals to third val. And then, to print the output of the greatest value, I put cout command together with the string the greatest value is together with the value of variable GV. Then, we can end our program and try to run it. So, for the first value, for example, it is 20. Then, second value is 67. The third value is 43. Then, we will get the greatest value, 67. So, meaning na nag-run yung program natin at nag-work siya properly. So, let's now move on to program number 3. For this program, I use 4 variables: quiz, labx, midx, which I declared as integer data type. Then the other variable is grade, which I declared as float. So I use output and input functions here to ask the user to input their scores in quiz, lab exercises, and midterm exam. Next, because we need to compute for the grades, we have to use a computation here. The formula I use in this program is grade is equals to quiz multiplied by 0.30 plus labx multiplied by 0.30 plus midx multiplied by 0.40. Then, to print the grade, I use cout grade together with the value of the variable grade. Next, we are also asked to determine the grade based on the description A, B, C, D, E, and F. So to do this, I use nested if-else statement. So if grade is less than or equal to 74, then the program will print the output F. But if it is false, then it will move on to the next statement, which is else if grade is equals to 75 or grade is less than or equal to 79. If this statement is true, then it will print the output E. Now, if it is false again or nag-false pa rin yung statement natin na to, then the program will just move on to the next else if statements until it became true. In the last part, you can see an else statement here. So the program will execute this else statement if all of the else if statements above are false. Then we can end our program now and try to run it. So for example, the input quiz score by the user is 90, and for the laboratory exercises is 87, and for the midterm exam is, for example, is 89. Then we will get the grade 88.7 with the description of C. So let's check if 88.7 is C. So it is correct. 88.7 is in the description of C. So this means that our program works properly. So for number 4, we are asked to use looping and switch statement together to print the output Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday respectively or in order. So for this program, I used the variable day and I declared it as integer data type. Next, for the looping, I used the for loop. So day is equals to 1 will be executed first because this is where the loop control variable is assigned with its initial value. So the initial value for day is 1. Then our comparison expression will be evaluated next, which is day is less than or equal to 7. I put day is less than or equal to 7 because we only have 7 cases that needs to be executed. So it should be not more than 7. So if this evaluates to true, then the body will be executed. Then, as you can see, the loop update I use is increment or day increment. So this will add to the value of our loop control variable day. So dahil ang comparison expression natin ay day is less than or equal to 7, the loop will only stop if it reaches the value of greater than 7 or it turns out to be false. So basta nag-false na siya, magi-stop na yung ating looping. So this is our switch expression. Because our initial value for day is 1, the program will execute the case 1 first. After that, because we use increment, the loop will update by 1 and the value of day will now be 2. So the program will now execute case 2. And the same goes on for the next cases until it executes case number 7 or until it turns out to be false. Then, we can end our program now and try to run it. And as you can see, we print out the correct output and it means that our program worked properly. So that's all and hope you're doing fine. Thank you.